Democrats are looking to flip the script on the GOP when it comes to supporting the police. We mentioned yesterday a scoop from The Intercept found House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is directing Democrats in Congress to blame Republicans for, quote, defunding the police by not voting for the American Rescue Plan, where some places are using the funding to boost their police departments.
And while it remains to be seen if that's a winning strategy or not, we know that the public perception of the police has taken a toll the past year. From the global protests against police brutality to the countless videos of violent police encounters with protesters.
But how do voters feel about police officers in general? We have new exclusive Hill-HarrisX data on the matter. Let's take a look.
The survey found that voters overwhelmingly have a favorable view of police officers. That includes all voters across demographics.
But there are slight variations to note. While a majority of voters across age ranges held a favorable view of police officers, younger voters were more likely to say they have an unfavorable view of police officers than older voters. That's also true among Democratic voters and voters of color. A quick methodology note, the sample sizes for Black and Hispanic voters were smaller, so take that data with a grain of salt. Kim, what's your take?
I think that as expected, we note here that the younger voters are the ones who are more skeptical of the police. And I think a lot of that has to do with youth in general being more, attuned with what's going on in causes and injustices. And but also, I wonder how much social media has to do with that sort of sentiment as well. I mean, younger voters are more, they're on Twitter more. They're watching, they're seeing more injustice happen in real time on Twitter when people are constantly saying things that, when you're an older person, you're 65 and you're not on there and you're just kind of watching the regular news. I feel like the younger people are just more inundated with horrific stories and that sort of thing. So I think it's no real surprise, but I'm curious if, like in previous generations, if through time, those younger voters will have a more favorable view of police as they, own homes and kind of move on with their lives and have children and kind of worry about their kids. Or I wonder if the actual sentiments that have arisen, especially since the wake of, George Floyd in 2020, I wonder if those sentiments will stick with that generation through time.
Yeah, and I thought it was kind of interesting that if you asked police officers generally how they would expect this survey to turn out, they would probably tell you, it's going to say 98% of people have an unfavorable view of police. The number one complaint you hear from cops nowadays is that they don't get support from the public. And they're so upset about that in many cities around the country, there are basically work stoppages, work slowdowns going on, where they've said to their city councils, that they've said to the public, if you don't like the way we do our jobs, then we're not going to do our jobs. And the rise in killings, I think, is not disconnected from that phenomenon. So maybe the police officers could take a look at this and say, hey, there's something about the way that I am consuming media that has led me astray on this question.
Right. It's sort of that same thing I was just saying, the younger people kind of seeing all that, and maybe that's persuading their perception. And maybe that's the same for these police officers as well. They're seeing that and thinking, oh, nobody likes me. And in reality, the majority actually do. Another Washington, D.C. police officer died by suicide following the events of January 6th, making him the fourth officer to do so after defending the Capitol that day. I mean, what do you think of the Democrats and Republicans' responses to police treatment during the George Floyd protests compared to the Capitol riot, Ryan?
I mean, it's been quite remarkable to see the rhetoric that Republican lawmakers and Republican broadcasters have been spewing at police officers. Because we are conditioned to expect that it's the left that's more hostile to law enforcement. But you would never have elected Democrats using any of the language that Republicans have recently about particularly the Capitol Police. After the testimony before the January 6th Commission, you had Republicans and Republican commentators demanding to see the body cam footage to prove that the harrowing stories they had told were true. Questioning the veracity of their charges, calling them left-wing activists, calling them snowflakes. Just extraordinary rhetoric to be using toward people who you have to see every day. These are not abstract figures. They come to work and pass by these officers each day.
Yeah, I really hope that sort of tenuous rhetoric didn't have something to do with this officer choosing to take his own life. I mean, it's very, very tragic. But it does kind of bring up a point that what you were just saying of really after during George Floyd in 2020, of course, the right was very like police, and while the left was saying defund the police. And we have seen that script completely flip now. And now Democrats are championing Capitol Police and saying we want to expand their powers and expand their money. And Republicans are the ones saying, no way, this is crazy. And what's really, I think, a big takeaway with that is, obviously things are extremely political. And unfortunately, it seems that rather than the right saying, wow, okay, now you see our point. Right, because that seems to be the logical response after Democrats say, oh, no, we need police protection. And then Republicans can say, see what I mean? This is what we were talking about. Instead, they completely flip and they say, well, because now you're saying that I have to go in the other direction. I mean, it's just the insanity of the political theater is, this is just exhausting. This is why we can't actually make progress.
No, it really is. It really is. We'll have to leave it there. And thank you, everybody, for watching What America's Thinking. We'll see you next time.